This project in Osmosa now is called 2.8B420K. It forms part of a series of projects I've been developing for 3 or 4 years now. A series called the Haunting series, which all respond to how, as a species, as a society, how we face up to the notion of impermanence and trying to project our imaginations into various points in the future where processes and things come to an end. This project proposes a monument that commemorates the end of all life, a point where the Earth transitions from a biological to a non-biological entity. A lot of the work I make, I'm really interested in points of transition, points of change, states where we change from one kind of a reality to another, one kind of perception to another, one kind of physics to another. The idea behind the work is that in 2.8 billion years from now, the process of the sun gradually increasing its luminosity on this process to becoming a red giant star, in somewhere around 2.8 billion years' time, the average temperature on Earth reaches 420K, or 147 degrees Celsius. This is the temperature at which the life is no longer possible on the Earth. With an average temperature of 147, then the top temperature for the viability of life is passed everywhere on the Earth. Even at this time, the last living organisms will be some quite extremophile microbes living underground in the poles. But when this moment comes, even they will be gone, and at some moment the last organism will die and the Earth will become non-biological. And until we know otherwise, that's the end of life everywhere. We don't know of any other life apart from here on the Earth. We believe it to be statistically probable, but maybe we never find it, maybe we never see it. The life on Earth which has already happened we've never seen, the life on Earth which is to come which we will never see, the life on Earth we see around us now, this is all we have. This is, for what we know now, this is the consciousness of the universe. And in 2.8 billion years' time, that comes to an end. So I thought it was important, an interesting idea to propose a monument that responds to some personal ideas of my own, but which also will then mark this transition in a very simple gestural way, in a subtle performance that nothing will see. Nothing will see it, nothing will witness it, but the performance happens anyway. The Earth contains this object, this monument, which it then, through physical processes, makes this performance to commemorate the end of all life. The symbolism of the monument is based on the important aspect of the two large black spheres. These respond to what's really the motivation behind the whole Haunting series projects I'm making, and this is kind of responding not in a personal therapy way, but just exploring a certain kind of consciousness that I had as a child. And between the ages of maybe 6 years and 10 years old, I would regularly and suddenly, without warning, have this incredibly lucid and tangible awareness. It wasn't a vision, it wasn't a dream, it wasn't a hallucination, it was a very tangible awareness of a presence. And the presence was two vast, enormous, massively heavy, dark spheres. And these spheres were connected by the finest of threads. And the spheres were slowly pulling apart. They were becoming separated. If the thread connecting the two spheres were to break, that would unleash all the deepest, darkest horrors that humanity in its nightmares could ever imagine. And this would come regularly as a child, and it kind of formed this, it forms this sensation of the inevitability of endings, of what we classify as catastrophe. These things all happen. Everything ends, everything comes to an end, everything disintegrates, everything dissolves, everything disappears. So the task of the monument is to hold the spheres, to prevent them from falling, to prevent them from separating for the time which life exists. Eventually, when the last living organism dies, and the temperature reaches 147, and this temperature disintegrates a component which is holding the spheres together, then the spheres can separate, they can fall to the ground. All the dark, horror and sufferings can be unleashed, but nothing is left alive to suffer them. It's safe, it's fine, the horrors can happen, it's no problem anymore. So this is one of the main ideas and symbolisms behind the actual structure and the purpose of the monument. I find it interesting to propose ideas in two different kinds of ways. I find it interesting to propose ideas which seem impossible even to the point of being kind of crazy and ridiculous, things which we kind of know that we can't achieve. But also I think it's really interesting to take an idea which is unachievable, which is seemingly impossible, and to build a strong, rigorous foundation from science and engineering, and to build a platform on which you can actually genuinely speculate about how you might actually begin to achieve these things. That you can develop strategies to approach the impossible, to try and overcome these barriers, and to find that point where empirical knowledge transforms slowly into speculation and hope or expectation. And I also find it interesting to propose ideas that might enable, and it sounds kind of grandiose, I understand, but to try and imagine ideas that might unite humanity. I think kind of humanity has so much capacity to create incredible things, to understand itself, to understand the universe, to make magnificent gestures in this brief time that we have. But we have so many obstacles that prevent us from doing that, from our own psyche, our own humanity prevents us to do these things. So I think it's interesting to try and imagine situations where there would have to be a large amount of unification and agreement to realize these almost impossible kind of scenarios. And also this to allow us to confront the notion of impermanence, which is a thing that we struggle with. I talk sometimes about that it's kind of easy for us to visualize things. We can visualize impermanence, we can visualize change, but it's actually really difficult to imagine it to the extent that we inhabit it. We can't cross this chasm of inhabiting an imagination, but we can quite easily visualize. So I like to put that challenge as well, that we live with a perception of permanence. We live with a perception, especially in the in the developed world, in the Western world, that the things around us, it's easy to accept that they've always been there, and it's easy to accept that they will always be there. We can understand the idea that things won't be here, but to actually inhabit our imagination of things not being there is very difficult. And that it's really hard for us to inhabit timescales which are so much beyond ours. When we think that kind of the history of civilization is 10,000 years, but when we're talking on scales of millions, tens of millions or billions, we can't project ourselves into that, we can't internalize the massive processes of change that will happen over these timescales. And so I think it's interesting to create an anchor now. By creating this monument, we create an anchor in time now, but we know that the timeline of this monument stretches into a future that's so deep, that it's so distant, that we really struggle to imagine it. But it's there, it gives us a tangible anchor to hold on to and to try and project our imaginations that far into the future. In the exhibition, there's several elements which are trying to tell this story. It's a combination of speculative fiction, but it also contains an element of genuine proposal. It's not just, okay, well, wouldn't it be interesting to build this monument? It's actually a challenge to say, hey, well, let's build it. I really want to build this thing. It's a massive, massive challenge, but I want this to be built. This is the first phase in making that happen. This is kind of disseminating the idea out there. This is kind of planting the seed of this monument in the consciousnesses of as many people as possible now. So in this phase of the exhibition, we have a large-scale model of the monument. This model is like 1.5 meters tall, and the actual monument itself would have to be 20 times that, 30 times that, maybe 50 meters tall, maybe more. It has to be really large, partly to kind of withstand and partly to encapsulate the significance of what it's trying to do. Behind this large model of the monument, we have a twin-channel video, which is showing the Earth as it will be, as we understand it will be, in a post-biological future, 2.8 billion years, when there's no more tectonic activity, there's no more oceans, there's no more water on the surface, there's no plant life, no animal life. It's basically the Earth is a desert, a very hot, lifeless desert. And so on one channel we have images taken from the real world, from reality. There's images I've taken in Iceland, there's images I've taken in the sand dunes to the south of Barcelona. There's images from Mars, which I obviously didn't take myself, there's from the NASA archives. And this has all been kind of in post-production and kind of recolorized and edited to resemble more this kind of lifeless future environment. And on the other channel, there's desert landscapes created in Unreal Engine. So we have both the real and the unreal, but they're both, the unreal and the unreal are both depicting in the imaginary speculative future that we understand will come. And so it's kind of encouraging the viewer to replace the world they see around them with the world that they're seeing before them on the video, and understand that where we are now, one day will be that. This is what this will become, this place where we are now, wherever we are, wherever we're seeing the work. When we step outside again, we know that in the future, where we're standing will be this. And then there's a series of 3 models, which is kind of a storyboard, 3 smaller models, showing a cutaway of the first one showing the monument when it's actually built, and it's demonstrating a proposal for how the monument would endure the future. It's placed in a kind of a geological sarcophagus, which consists of a deep pit, as if it was these kind of open mines with the step sides of maybe 200 or 300 meters below the surface, maybe more, where the platform on which the monument rests. Over the top of that is a dome built of black diamond, and on top of that there's an artificial mountain, which is again several hundred meters tall, whose job it is, the job of this system is to protect the monument for as many tens or hundreds of million years as possible from the forces of erosion. Even the mountains that we see around us, even the tallest mountain range, only exist for 200 or 300 million years, maybe 500 million years at the most. So by building a mountain out of the most resistant materials we can find, then we can maybe buy some time, that this will erode over a period of a few 100 million years. The Earth's surface is also removed at quite quick rates by process of erosion, so effectively, as the surface erodes away, the platform on which the monument stands is raised up to become surface, and at some point in the future, the monument is then released into the world, it's exposed. And only the resistance of its own materials is what then helps it to withstand the erosive processes of the environment. And these series of dioramas show that progression from the present to a point about 1.5 billion years in the future to a point just when it's ready to make its performance. And so all these ideas of how to protect the monument, what materials to make it out of, what material would provide the trigger to react at that temperature, how humanity would create the monument, how humanity would care for it, how humanity would relate to it in so many ways, what the future climate would be like. All these ideas have been developed through the last year working with geologists, material scientists, speculative anthropologists, climatologists, cultural historians here from the University of Ljubljana, the University of Barcelona, the University of Tampere in Helsinki. And this, in many ways, I feel like this archive of knowledge, of understanding, of ideas, maybe that's more the fabric of the project, that the objects that are in the exhibition are really symbols of this deeper weaving and texture of information which is being produced. So as much of this as possible is contained in the last part, which is in the smaller room, and we have this large-scale book which introduces the idea of the project. It gives us some context about monuments and time scales, and monuments and time capsules and time scales, and how things might play out over time. It illustrates the range of problems that the making a monument faces. The geological problems, the erosion problems, the materials problems. And then it makes a series of propositions about, kind of based on this understanding we have, it makes a series of propositions about how we might overcome these problems, what we can do by creating maybe this geological sarcophagus, by employing certain materials, by using a polymer which reacts at exactly 147 Celsius to make the spheres separate, and by using some of the kind of cutting edge ceramics that we have now, which are just incredibly resistant materials to kind of erosive, abrasive forces, or by trying to imagine how humanity reacts in certain parallel situations and how we think that might play out within society. And this is so. All this is contained within this book, which is kind of presented as a, it's the only book of its kind in the world. It's large. It's full of information. It's kind of like it's kind of part speculative fiction. It's part sacred text. It's part instruction manual. It's all these things, and it's So we have a person there. It's actually we're not supposed to touch it. There's a distance from it, and it's kind of the pages are turned ritualistically by someone wearing white gloves, to kind of convey the importance of this body of information about how we might use it to confront this idea of the deep future and things coming to an end.